Hello. Well, again, I have to warn you that if you are of a nervous disposition, you might not be too relaxed with what I'm about to say. Just warning you. And also, I have to apologise for the tardiness of this video. I do have an excuse though. I had to take an elderly friend to hospital and I spent most of the afternoon in the A&E. So if this video is somewhat less polished than usual, then you'll know why. Pressure of time, and it's quite late now. Oh, and I've got my library back. I'm sure that most of you old-timers on this channel might appreciate that. Okay, I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So I'm going to be talking about the slaver gangs again, but I'm going to approach that from a slightly different angle because it suddenly occurred to me that there were some similarities with other situations. I've seen some of the interviews the Israel army have been conducting with Hamas with Hamas terrorists whom they have captured. One of them, who was involved in the Nova Festival attack, well, in case you don't know, that was the music festival which was raided by a group of Hamas terrorists on October the 7th, 2023. 400 of the young people at that peace festival, ironically, were killed, and most of the women were raped and brutalised. Some of the things that were done were so depraved, it's almost impossible to believe that a human being could commit such acts, or having done them, would brag about it. But I suppose they reckoned they were fighting for Allah, and apparently that stilled their consciences pretty efficiently. One of the women who took on the job of preparing the victims for burial said that the bodies of the murdered girls had been so mutilated that not one of however many, 200-300 girls, not one was in a state fit to be shown to the grieving parents. I can't find the video now. Well, that's part of the reason because I'm so late doing this. But I saw one of the interviews of a captured terrorist. It was probably on Telegram now I come to think of it. Yeah. Actually, to digress a bit, one characteristic I noticed about the examples of Homo barbarus who were being interviewed was how forthcoming and matter of fact they were about what they'd done. They didn't appear to be frightened, ashamed, or even particularly troubled. In many cases, it was as if they were, reporting the steps they had to take to sort out a routine problem with the drains. Anyway, very matter-of-factly, one of those creatures was asked, "Why did you do those things?" And he replied, "We wanted to humiliate them, to dirty them." Now, at this point, you may consider that only those who feel themselves to be terribly inferior would have that sort of thought in mind, wanting to bring down to their level other human beings they see as superior and of whom they are consequently jealous. It seemed to me like a telling admission that deep down those Gazans know just how far down they have sunk in the morality area. And now I come to think of it, you know what really surprised me? I mean, those girls at the Nova Festival, those young women, they were all liberated young women. And yet the ones I saw being dragged off, well, they had what looked like bloodstains on their clothing around the lower hip area, which probably meant that they'd been virgins before those bastards had got at them. They were liberated young women, but apparently they felt no need to sleep around. It's sort of, that struck me very forcibly. Anyway, to get back to the point, it was the idea of humiliating the enemy that seems to be part of Muslim ideas of conquest and rule. It's actually written down in the Quran, of course, that when a disbeliever pays jizya is the word for the protection money that Islam demands of all unbelievers. It's sort of super tax. When a disbeliever pays the jizya, the good Muslim is obliged to humiliate this person or this representative in some way. I have heard of them being slapped with the official's shoe or actually spat at. And we all know that when Saladin conquered Jerusalem, he boasted about how he took particular satisfaction in the humiliation of those women that were taken as spoils of war and divided up amongst his various followers. And that was in the 12th century. Things don't seem to have changed much since then, do they? So I'm bringing this up now because of the slavery gangs who appear to have rampaged unchecked through the British Isles with the complicity of the police, the legal system and the governments. Now, the Conservative government and the Labour government both ignored this horror that was going on. And they both did it for a different reason. The Labour government ignored it because they had a lot of Muslim voters. So they were quite prepared to accept Muslim law-breaking, provided those Muslims voted for them. I think probably the Conservatives, who had a very low level of Muslim vote, were not doing it for voting. They were doing it because the Conservatives have been vilified in the media and by the Labour Party and by all the intellectuals and the public cognoscenti, that the Conservatives were just a little bit short of being Nazis. And so they didn't want to add to that by going for the, certain ethnic group that appears to be misbehaving. I think that's probably the reason the Conservatives stayed quiet. But you see how the left has grabbed the national narrative, and in doing so, they are responsible for what happened to all these working class girls. And I don't see many people on the left who are in the least bit bothered by that. In fact, just like those Hamas creatures, those Hamas things who were not particularly bothered about what they'd done before they got caught by the Israelis. What I found most striking in the reports of the depraved behaviour of the rape gangs here in this country, it wasn't just the simple rape, which, some might have argued was done in order to gratify a sexual desire. I mean, I don't think that, but people could make that argument if they're not terribly bright. But it wasn't just the rape, was it? What those I don't want to call them men, it's just an insult to men, isn't it? What those barbarians did involved the complete humiliation and the bestial treatment of the girls. It wasn't just the raping, it was the degradation. I mean, without trying to do an oppression Olympics, there is a strong family resemblance there, isn't there? The difference being that in the British example, not the same number of murders by any stretch. But there were some murders, and I suspect there would have been more if the things had not probably thought that even our lazy, prejudiced, bigoted police and our lazy, terrified, weak, incompetent politicians would have had to do something if enough young girls had disappeared. So mostly they stopped short of murder. But I don't think that they did that out of any sense of morality, frankly. Not when I've read what else they did. And you have to ask, why should a bunch of Gazan terrorists and a bunch of people who came from a Pakistani heritage but were brought up in Britain and have broad regional accents, why should there be this similarity? Why should there be this family resemblance in the treatment of young women who are obviously not perceived as being part of their in-group? Well, I can come up with only one answer there. OK, till next time, you can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.